Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we're here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, the Status Quo, Chapter 25, Text 41. Nanyatramad Bhagavata Pradhana Purushesvarat Atmana Sarva Bhutanam Vayam Tivram Nivartate. The terrible fear of birth and death can never be forsaken by anyone who resorts to any shelter other than myself, for I am the Almighty Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original source of all creation, and also the Supreme Soul of all souls. Purport. It is indicated herein that the cycle of birth and death cannot be stopped unless one is a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. It is said, Harim vinana mritim taranti. One cannot surpass the cycle of birth and death unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same concept is confirmed herewith. One may take to the system of understanding the absolute truth by one's own imperfect sensory speculation, or one may try to realize the self by the mystic yoga process. But whatever one may do, unless he comes to the point of surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no process can give him liberation. One may ask if this means that those who are undergoing so much penance and austerity by strictly following the rules and regulations are endeavoring in vain. The answer is given by Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32. Yenye Ravindaksha Vimukta Manina. Lord Brahma and other demigods prayed to the Lord when Krishna was in the womb of Devaki. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, there are persons who are puffed up with the thought that they have become liberated, or one with God, or have become God. But in spite of thinking in such a puffed up way, their intelligence is not laudable. They are less intelligent. It is stated that their intelligence, whether high or low, is not even purified. Their intelligence, whether high or low, is not even purified. In purified intelligence, a living entity cannot think otherwise than to surrender. Bhagavad Gita therefore confirms that purified intelligence arises in the person of a very wise man. Bahunam janmanam mante janavamam prapadyante. After many, many births, one who is actually advanced in intelligence surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. Without the surrendering process, one cannot achieve liberation. The Bhagavatam says those who are simply puffed up, thinking themselves liberated by some non-devotional process, are not polished or clear in intelligence, for they have not yet surrendered unto you. Hare Krishna, Dhanavat Pranams Prabhu. Okay. Without the surrendering process, one cannot achieve liberation. The Bhagavatam says those who are simply puffed up, thinking themselves liberated by some non-devotional process, are not polished or clear in intelligence, for they have not yet surrendered unto you. In spite of executing all kinds of austerities and penances, or even arriving at the brink of spiritual realization in Brahman realization, they think that they are in effulgence of Brahman, but actually, because they have no transcendental activities, they fall down to material activities. One should not be satisfied simply with knowing that one is Brahman. He must engage himself in the service of the Supreme Brahman. That is bhakti. The engagement of Brahman should be the service of Para-Brahman. It is said that unless one becomes Brahman, one cannot serve Brahman. The Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the living entity is also Brahman. Without realization that he is Brahman, spirit soul, an eternal servitor of the Lord, if one simply thinks that he is Brahman, his realization is only theoretical. He has to realize and at the same time engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. Then he can exist in the Brahman status. Otherwise, he falls down. The Bhagavatam says that because non-devotees neglect the transcendental loving service of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, their intelligence is not sufficient, and therefore these persons fall down. The living entity must have some activity. As soon as one falls down to material activity, there is no rescue from the cycle of birth and death. It is stated here by Lord Kapila, without my mercy, Srimad Bhagavata, the Lord is stated here to be Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, indicating that he is full of all opulences and is therefore perfectly competent to deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. He is also called Pradhana, because he is the Supreme. He is equal to everyone, but one who surrenders to him is especially favorable. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is equal to everyone. No one is his enemy and no one is his friend. But that to one who surrenders unto him, he is especially inclined. By the grace of the Lord, simply by surrendering unto him, one can get out of this cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, one may go on in many, many lives and may many times attempt other processes for liberation. Text 42. Madhvayad vati vatoyam suryastapati madhvayat vashastindro sahatyagnir mrityuscharati madhvayat. It is because of my supremacy that the wind blows. Out of fear of me, the sun shines out of... It is because of my supremacy that the wind blows. Out of fear of me, the sun shines out of fear of me. And the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. Fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the natural laws being enacted are correct in all the activities because of his superintendence. No one should think that nature is working automatically without superintendence. The Vedic literature says that the clouds are controlled by the demigod Indra. Heat is distributed by the sun god. The soothing moonlight is distributed by Chandra, and the air is blowing under the arrangement of the demigod Vayu. But above all these demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the chief living entity. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitana, at the Upanishad 2.2.13. The demigods are also ordinary living entities, but due to their faithfulness, their devotional service attitude, they have been promoted to such posts. These different demigods or directors, such as Chandra, Varuna, and Vayu, are called Adhikari Devata. The demigods are departmental heads. The government of the Supreme Lord consists not only of one planet or two or three, there are millions of planets and millions of universes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a huge government and he requires assistance. The demigods are considered his bodily limbs. These are the descriptions of the Vedic literature. Under these circumstances, the sun god, the moon god, the fire god, and the air god are working under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. The natural laws are being conducted under his superintendence. Because he is in the background, everything is being performed punctually and regularly. One who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely protected from all other influences. He no longer serves or is obliged to anyone else. Of course, he is not disobedient to anyone, but his full of power of thought is absorbed in the service of the Lord. The statements by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Kapila that under his direction the air is blowing, the fire is burning, and the sun is giving heat are not sentimental. The impersonalist may say the Bhagavatam devotees create and imagine someone as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and assign qualifications to him, but actually it is neither an imagination nor an imposition of artificial power in the name of Godhead. In the Vedas it is said, Visashmadvatapavate Vishodeti Suryaha. By fear of the Supreme Lord, the wind god and the sun god are acting. Visamad Agnis Chandrascha Mrityorjavati Panchama. Agni, Indra, and Mrityu are also acting under his direction. These are the statements of the Vedas. Text 43. Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yogena Yogina Shemhaya Paramula Me Pravishantya Kutobayam. The yogis, equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter of my lotus feet. And since I am the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdom of Godhead without fear. Purport. One who actually wants to be liberated from the entanglement of this material world and go back home, back to Godhead, is actually a mystic yogi. The words explicitly used here are yuktena bhakti yogena. Those yogis or mystics who engage in devotional service are the first-class yogis. The first-class yogis, as described in Bhagavad Gita, are those who are constantly thinking of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. These yogis are not without knowledge and renunciation. To become a bhakti yogi means to automatically attain knowledge and renunciation. That is the consequent result of bhakti yoga. In the Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, it is also confirmed that one who engages in the devotional service of Vasudeva, Krishna, has complete transcendental knowledge and renunciation. And there is no explanation for these attainments. Ahoituki, without reason, they come. Even if a person is completely illiterate, the transcendental knowledge of the scriptures is revealed unto him simply because of his engagement in devotional service. That is also stated in the Vedic literature. To anyone who has full faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the spiritual master, all the import of the Vedic literatures is revealed. He does not have to seek separately. The yogi who engages in devotional service is full in knowledge and renunciation. If there is a lack of knowledge and renunciation, it is to be understood that one is not in full devotional service. The conclusion is that one cannot be sure of entrance into the spiritual realm in either of the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Lord or the Vaikuntha planets within the Brahman effulgence, unless he is surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The surrendered souls are called Akutobhaya. They are doubtless and fearless, and their entrance into the spiritual kingdom is guaranteed. Text 44. Etavaneva lokesmin pumsamniheshvaya sodaya tivrena bhakti yogena manomai arpitam stiram. Therefore, persons whose minds are fixed on the Lord engage in the intensive practice of devotional service. That is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. Purport. Here the words mano mai arpitam, which mean the mind being fixed on me, are significant. One should fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna or his incarnation. To be fixed steadily in that freedom is the way of liberation. Ambarish Maharaj is an example. He fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. He spoke only on the pastimes of the Lord. He smiled only the flowers and tulsi offered to the Lord. He smelled only the flowers and tulsi offered to the Lord. He walked only to the temple of the Lord. He engaged his hands in cleansing the temple. He engaged his tongue in tasting the foodstuff offered to the Lord. And he engaged his ears for hearing the great pastimes of the Lord. In that way, all his senses were engaged. First of all, the mind should be engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord very steadily and naturally. Because the mind is the master of the senses, when the mind is engaged, all the senses became engaged. All the senses become engaged. That is bhakti yoga. Yoga means controlling the senses. The senses cannot be controlled in the proper sense of the term. They are always agitated. This is true also with a child. How long can he be forced to sit down silently? It is not possible. Even Arjuna said, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. The mind is always agitated. The best course is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. Manomai arpitam stiram. If one seriously engages in Krishna consciousness, that is the highest perfectional stage. All Krishna conscious activities are on the highest perfectional level of human life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 25th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from chapter 26, Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, on Wednesday. Were there any comments or questions from the devotees before we end? Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai.
Jai.
All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhakti Veda Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Nishangapali Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai.
Jai.
Kamai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Scientific Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jai Princeton Bhakti Vedanta Institute Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Hari 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 Bol. Jai Shrimati Uma Devi Dasi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Oh, Prabhu, are you there? Hare Krishna. Gaurchandra Prabhu, is it you? Gaurchandra Prabhu Ki Jai. Gaurchandra Prabhu Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Yes. Uma Devi Prabhu is staying there in the Sringapali with Srila Shanta Maharaj. Very happy to see you, Prabhu. This is the first time I'm able to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam Prabhu.
Dandavad.